time to go from call in until it's ready.
All right, we're live.
Okay, call the Tuesday, May 26th, 2020 regular board meeting of the Jersey Shore Area School District to order. Mr. Enders, could you do a roll call, please?
Mr. Becker.
Here.
Mr. Berngard.
Here.
Mrs. Dobler.
Here.
Mrs. Grant.
Here.
Mr. Kinley.
Here.
Mrs. Petrosky.
Here.
Mrs. Stemler.
Here.
Mrs. Thomas.
Here.
Mr. Allen.
Here.
All 9 members present.
Okay, we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge
Allegiance
to
to the flag
flag of the United
States of America
and to the republic
Republic for which it
and
stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
liberty and justice for all. Okay, the next item on the agenda is approval of minutes for the April 13th, 27th, and a special meeting on the 29th. Could I have a motion to approve?
So moved. Oh, sorry.
Harry was second, or?
second.
Okay, any questions, comments, or corrections? Okay, hearing none, roll call please, Mr. Enders.
Mr. Becker.
Yes.
Mr. Berngard.
Yes.
Mrs. Dobler.
Here. Yes.
Mrs. Grant.
Yes.
Mr. Kinley.
We didn't lose the trees.
Yes.
Mrs. Petrosky.
Yes.
Mrs. Stemler.
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas.
Yes.
Mr. Allen.
Yes.
9-0.
Okay. And just as an announcement, we had an executive session prior to the beginning of this meeting for personnel and legal. Treasurer's report. We have the treasurer's report from April 2020 and the investment report from 2020. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Thomas and Mr. Kinley. Any corrections or discussions? Questions? Okay, roll call please, Mr. Enders.
Mr. Becker.
Yes.
Mr. Berngard.
Yes.
Mrs. Dobler.
Yes.
Mrs. Grant.
Yes.
Mr. Kinley.
Yes.
Mrs. Petrosky.
Yes.
Mrs. Stemler.
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas.
Yes.
Mr. Allen.
Yes.
9-0.
Okay, the next item, approval of bills in the amount of $3,043,172.88. Have a motion, please.
So moved, Mary.
Second.
Okay, Mrs. Thomas and Mr. Brungard. Any questions, comments, concerns?
I just have a quick question. The voided checks, what could happen for them? They weren't needed, or they were just, what happened, Ben, Mr. Enders?
two of the checks were lost. They were voided, and there was another check to a vendor that was to the incorrect vendor, so they had to be voided there.
Okay, thank you.
And the lost checks had stop issues placed on them.
Any other questions? Okay, hearing none, Mr. Enders, roll call, please.
Mr. Becker,
Yes.
Mr. Brungard,
Yes.
Mrs. Dobler,
Yes.
Mrs. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Kinley,
Yes.
Mrs. Petrosky,
Yes.
Mrs. Stemler,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
9-0.
Okay, moving on to communications, Dr. Dady.
The only communications we have right now is, again, reminding everyone that not only is the lunch and breakfast distribution, the meal distribution that we have still going on and will, and based on if it gets approved tonight, may throughout June. But as well that these yet today, tomorrow, and Thursday for elementary, the daytime pickup of student materials is going on. Times were sent from your principals. Also, there's an evening time for students to be able to pick things up, and that is Thursday from 4 to 7. And then, as well, the graduation plans have gone out to all the seniors. If something would change that we would go to green, we might be able to adjust that, depending on if any other stipulations come out with that, if and when our county would go to green in time. So we are planning all those things, and the plans currently are in place, and we're ready to go with the graduation as we have it as it stands now. But if it would change, we are also prepared to be able to make some changes should the restrictions allow us to do so.
Okay, and I received some contact from other board members that, and I agree myself, it appears by looking at the graduation stage area that the only board member that will be in that location is myself.
But you and I talked earlier, it can be any kind of rotation or whatever that you want if you each want to spend a certain amount of time or anything there. It's just limiting the amount of people up on the stage at one time. So if you would like it to be a rotation or anything like that, they're welcome to be there staged at different areas. If you want to rotate who's up on the stage, that's perfectly acceptable.
I would like everybody that's interested in participating to go ahead and contact Dr. Dady. And then we can figure out where they're going to distribute the board members. Only one of us will be on the main stage. I think we can rotate, and we would try to rotate among the 6 groups of graduates. Normally for graduation, we are able to kind of pop in and pop out. If there's someone, a cousin or brother or, son or daughter that's going to be graduating. So if you do have somebody in one group that you would like to be at the stage area when that person is announced, if you would put that down on your preference to Dr. Dady. I don't have any preference on when I am on the stage, but I just didn't want people to think that they were going to be excluded from participating.
The other thing I just need you to let me know, because if somebody may be in the situation where I can only be there for a certain amount of time, if you could because this process could end up taking longer than the normal graduation process. So if you can only be there a certain amount of times, just make sure I know that as well. So Mr. Keene and I can work that out for you.
And just to clarify, Dr. Dady and I did discuss this previously, but it was after the graduation plan was actually published.
Correct.
So, again, if you would just notify Dr. Dady, that would be great. Or notify him that you're happy not to participate at all if you choose not to.
If you could let me know by Friday, that'd be awesome. So that's it, Mr. Allen.
Any other questions on the graduation plan for Dr. Dady? I think you were mentioning that if it went green, we would still try to make some adjustments. Is that correct?
Yeah, Mr. Keene had talked to me previously as well that if we went to green, that, you know, as long as they don't tell us like Friday night we're going to green or something like that, to where we don't have a whole lot of time, that we will make whatever adjustments that we can. We do have to understand that, like, there's updates even coming on the colors that we got today through PASA about some of the restrictions of large gatherings. So there's some things we still have to figure out based on those new guidelines, but as long as we can make it work, we would try to make those accommodations to try to make this even more like the normal graduation as we possibly can.
Any other questions? Okay, move on to President's Report. I was wondering, did anyone notice I think it was in Ed Week, there was an article on disparities of remote learning under coronavirus. Did anyone not get that article, or are you all familiar with it? Okay, so everybody's familiar with it? Because I think what it does, it was written from the perspective of administrators and teachers nationally. So you'd have to take it with a little grain of salt, because the federal government didn't actually define the types of ongoing learning environments that school districts could do. But if you look at some of them, just for the public's purposes, the number one problem that was identified was big gaps in basic technology. And that would be either themselves or access to broadband. And that's exactly why our ongoing educational processes were not able to go through as continuing new education. So we're not alone, is the take home, I think, on that. I continue to attend the Thursday weekly buzz that's done by PSBA as the district liaison to PSBA. A couple of take homes there that they brought up. Act 20 was passed, and what that is they call it the Strive Act. And don't ask me what the Strive stands for, but basically it allows senior citizens to volunteer in the district and get credits toward their school taxes. Now, they would all have to be cleared through all of the normal clearances that any other school employee would in order to take advantage of that. So that was passed by the legislature. And the other thing that they're saying is that the property tax, the two bills that in the Senate and House that were pending to put a hold on property tax increases, still don't have the support from even the caucus where it was being generated from. And it seems to be that the pressure now is to rely on delaying the tax payments for both the local taxes and for state taxes, which would give people a little bit more time that they wouldn't normally have in order to pay those taxes. And that also ties in with the potential for the state to do a partial year budget where they would be able to adjust the second half of the year based on how the economic recovery looked at the time. That if it comes back as a real steep slope, or what they call a V response, then the taxes will be adjusted accordingly.
Mr.
Yes.
In the PASA update today, House Bill 2431, which is one of the property tax freeze bills, was reintroduced. But you're correct in saying also that even though it's come back for another consideration, it doesn't appear to have the support it needs. But if you want to look that one up, that's House Bill 2431, and then House Bill 2460. If anyone wants to look at that, that's the tax deadline extensions. And there is I'm probably not going to pronounce this right, GLEAM amendment, GLEIM, and that they're trying to attach to that House bill that would impose a tax freeze as well.
Yeah, what they were saying is they passed out of committee, but they have not got enough votes to pass broadly in the legislature, even among the Republican caucus that generated them.
Clarification, are we talking about tax freeze for this year or next year?
The legislation that's been introduced is still talking about this year. So
Okay.
the 2020-2021 school year.
Which is where we're at. We intend to do that.
What we're budgeting for now, right?
Okay, thank you.
Planning on doing anyway, or something at least very close to it. Okay, and that's all I have for President's report. Intermediate report.
I did encourage the IU school district members to adopt the PSBA charter reform resolution if they hadn't already done so, which I think there probably is quite a few in the IU 17 that hasn't done that, so hopefully they will. They also sent us a Blast IU 17 and PDE and WVIA have partnered to support remote learning, and they have resources for pre-K to third grade with learning resources, activities, and games, and that goes through May 29th, so that's soon wrapping up. And then for grades 4th through 12th, I think they have something every weekday at 7 p.m. And then their story time, and the IU director said, you know, they really had a great response from Jersey Shore teachers and the other teachers in the IU 17 that have volunteered their time to do the story time, and that's weekdays at 7 p.m. And I know there are quite a few Jersey Shore teachers. And that goes to June 25th, and Dr. Dady is going to post that on the Jersey Shore School District Facebook page. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Krosky. Superintendent's report.
Yes, I just sent you all an email. I didn't want to send it to you ahead of time because I was afraid you were going to ask me questions before this meeting, before I got a chance. So I sent it at the beginning of this meeting. What it is, in the course that you approved earlier, there was a course on psychology or intro to psychology. And you guys not only approve the course, you have to approve what book they use. So I do have one physical copy, which I'm showing you on my screen right now. That will be in the blue room. But what I emailed you is I emailed you basically a link to be able to see it electronically. So you don't have to come in and look at it if you don't want. It shows you the website and what they basically gave us a guest password and username to be able to view it online, so that this can go for approval so we can get it ordered. So this will be on approval in June, and but we needed to give you time to look it over, so you have a couple weeks to look it over before you approve the text. It is the text that's been recommended by the department that is going to be teaching the course, which is the social studies department. This is the text that they've chosen for that. And
Are they
then
allowed to use it as a social studies credit?
it is in the, I have to go back to the course catalog. I can get those answers for you. I don't have to hold anybody up here, but I can put it in my board update exactly what the credit, where the credit goes under if you'd like, Mrs. Thomas.
Okay, thanks.
And that was recommended by Mr. Green, correct?
Yeah, it was actually, I believe Mr. Harvey is teaching the course, but the social studies department where it was, looks at some of those things together, but Mr. Harvey's the one that was communicating with the different vendors, and this is the one that they've chosen. And then, yes, Mr. Green dropped it off here. He approved it. He's the department head. So I don't know if you call him the final approval before it comes to you guys. So he's the one that dropped it off. They could only get, until it gets approved, obviously, they were only willing to give us one physical copy, but luckily they gave us the electronic copy, so you guys can look at it that way if you prefer. But again, it will be in the blue room right following this meeting. So like Nancy can look at it before she leaves if she wants. That's where she's at. But anytime you guys want to stop in, just let us know and we'll let you in to take a look at it.
Dr. I have a question, might be out of line here, but with course of studies, what is being done for students to select their courses for next year? Is there anything that you can enlighten them? I've been asked that a couple times by a couple parents and stuff. Is there anything that you can enlighten us on? Has anything been done about that? Any planning?
My understanding of most of that occurred already before they actually left, because the guidance counselors met with students individually, and whether they've been able to continue that since the closure, I'm not positive. Like, I can speak. I know my son is a sophomore, and he met with the guidance counselors before he even left to do it. Basically, a temporary one. What you have to understand is after they do a temporary kind of course selection, then they build the schedule around how many sections they need. And Mary's probably a better one to answer all this than me, but they basically build the schedule on the need of, all right, how many kids need this course, how many sections of that course do we have to build, and then they create that schedule. And sometimes by the time it's all over, if there's only a few kids that maybe need a certain course, they may try to move that around or do something different with that, or cancel that course and maybe try to fit them in something else. But they won't get a final schedule really until after they build that, now that they know what kids need what courses. Is that pretty much correct, Mary? Because I know you know more about that.
Yes. And you also
So
have...
the process has started. That's good.
If someone has not heard, and I'll say this so more, I know I'm kind of saying this to you, Harry, but I'm kind of saying this so anyone listening can hear this. If someone's not heard anything or their child has not been talked to, then I would reach out to whoever your guidance counselor is at the high school. They should email them. Then Ben, I think you have a budget update.
Yeah, I provided a budget update attached to the agenda. Right now, the budget's sitting, it's just shy of $1.1 million deficit. There's about $25,000 change from the last meeting. That's primarily due to a resignation on the May 11th agenda. With that $1.1 million deficit, the projected fund balance would be $5,446,230 for the 2021, the end of the 2021 school year. That would be our unassigned fund balance would be 6.6% of budgeted expenditures, and the total committed or PSERS and health insurance and the unassigned will be about 12.5%. I know I informed the board of this in my board update last week. I want to let everyone know in the public that on late Thursday, I was informed that the Commonwealth is looking at the allocation that we were provided originally for our homestead farmstead amount. I can tell you that dollar amount for the 2021 school year is $1,143,755. That was about a $3,000 reduction over this year. However, I was informed, well, I think all business managers were informed on Thursday that the Commonwealth believed there was an error in that number, in the calculation. As of this morning, the information that we received from PASBO says that it's potentially could be cut in half. So we might only receive 50% of that. This homestead farmstead amount is the amount that qualified homestead farmstead parcels. There's an application process that's done by the county that homeowners can put their proper parcels in homestead farmstead, and then they receive a rebate on their tax return for being in there. The homestead farmstead, that rebate amount is what you will approve with the final budget. This year, based on the original allocation I had actually worked on last week, we are projecting to have a rebate on the tax bills of about $245. There was about 4,600 parcels in the district that were homestead farmstead eligible. And those dollar amounts it doesn't matter which county you live in, it's the same dollar amount. So that has nothing to do with it. At 50%, it came out to, I did calculate that this morning, it came out to about $122. This would impact our budget slightly. We would receive a reduction in our revenue of about $32,000. I won't go into the weeds on how that's calculated, but that's what I can tell you. How that would be the impact at 50%. The information we received from Harrisburg last week says that the Commonwealth is going to be getting us our new dollar amounts on June the 1st, at which time I'll go through and calculate everything, and I will have everything prepared for our June 8th board meeting for approval. And my plan is to send the board an email with one final budget reconciliation, which I don't expect many changes. This is probably the biggest one. And I know there's one agenda item on this evening that would change the budget for 2021. That would be reflected in it. And other than that, well, so would remain the same. I don't expect any other changes. Mr. Kinley, I do know last meeting you asked me about would change in assessed value change our real estate tax rates at all if we go to rebalance. I did get updated assessments from the counties, the last assessments updates I will get. It did not change the millage rates at all for the rebalance. Clinton County is the rebalance rate at 13.5010, and Lycoming County would go to 18.3139, which is exactly what I showed you in the last real estate tax analysis that we did at rebalance rate. So those would be the rates that I'm expecting to have on the agenda for the tax resolution on the 8th.
The rebate credit that we've seen on our tax bills for a number of years, is that roughly 15% of the face? Or do you know how that's arrived at?
So how it's arrived at, it's a pretty complex formula. You put the dollar amount into the calculator that we're going to get. I get a listing, a file of all the parcels in the in both counties. I get two separate listings from the counties of all the homesteads and all the farmsteads in there. And basically the calculator goes out and evens out the allocation. So there's only one number that all the parcels are getting. And that number does fluctuate slightly because there are parcels that kick off and there are parcels that are added. So that's how it's calculated. It's a pretty complex formula that goes out. It looks at all the parcels, plus then all the parcels that are assessed lower than the rebate. Essentially, their tax, they don't owe any taxes because rebate pays all the taxes. All that money left over from that gets redistributed between all the other parcels. There are actually approximately 51 parcels in the between the two counties that don't get a bill. That they get a bill, but it's a $0 bill because the rebate pays for all the taxes on it.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any other questions concerning budget? Like I said, I know this is not good news. Definitely not good news for our residents. That this rebate will probably going down. But I knew I wanted to bring it out in this board meeting, and then we will be able to finalize that information at the next board meeting.
I do have a comment, I guess. Like, I don't understand how the state wants us, school districts, to not increase our taxes, but then they want to decrease what they give us. I mean, that doesn't really, I mean, I know they're not fair anyways, but to take away what we should be getting doesn't seem right when they're expecting us not to raise taxes at all.
I think part of that, Mrs. Petrosky, is I believe that the dollars that go into the homestead farmstead are actually generated from the lottery, I believe. And they've had a reduction in their lottery revenues.
Casinos.
Yeah, lotteries or casinos or both.
Are they?
Yeah, I mean, they're estimating that number at about 300 million right now versus last year's. I think it was close to 500 million that they were able to distribute amongst districts.
Still stinks.
It does. I mean, like, so we're not supposed to raise taxes to generate any kind of revenue, and then they want to take revenue away from us of the little they give us anyway.
Well, the other thing going on in Harrisburg right now, in the budget rumblings that we got is, and you've heard this already, is that subsidies are looking to be level funded. Ben's notified us of that as well, and that includes, we were notified today, that will include basic ed, special ed, and CTE.
Which we already adjusted our budget for that at the beginning of May. The only silver lining in all this that I can say is, if we pass our real estate tax rates tonight and set them at rebalanced rates, at least our residents aren't going to get essentially a double whammy by a reduced rebate and an increase in real estate tax rates. That ends my report.
Anything else from Superintendent's report?
That's it.
Okay, at this point, I'm seeking a motion to add the matrix that we discussed at executive session under personnel for the non-contractual staff increases. And those increases would be 1.5% for our 10 employees, and those are primarily secretarial positions, network computer, and hearing impaired interpreters, and a 2% increase for primarily our part-time staff, and those are part-time custodians, crossing guards, and these are just examples. This isn't the entire list. Our hourly aid positions, and our attendance officer, and 4 part-time technology positions. So could I have a motion to add that salary matrix to the agenda for this evening?
So moved, Mary.
Second.
Mrs. Thomas and Mr. Kinley? And that would be item D under personnel. Any questions or discussion on that matrix?
Well, wouldn't that just be attached to letter A under personnel?
You're right. The line item is already there. So this would be an addendum to letter A, would be to add the matrix. Thank you, Mr. Enders. We still have to vote to add it, though. So we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
So this vote is just on the amendment.
This is just to add the amendment to item letter A.
Okay, thank you.
We went ahead and put the contractual employee pay rates as a placeholder, but we didn't have the addendum prepared at the time. Any questions on adding that? Any other questions on adding the addendum? Okay, hearing none, Mr. Enders, could you do a roll call on adding the addendum?
Mr. Becker,
Yes.
Mr. Brungard,
Yes.
Mrs. Dobler,
Yes.
Mrs. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Kinley,
Yes.
Mrs. Petrosky,
Yes.
Mrs. Stemler,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
9-0.
And that's the only change to the agenda. So at this time, we'll accept calls for courtesy of the floor. Mr. McCormick, I believe that's you out there. And Dr. Dady, did you do the announcement of the number?
Yep. Those of you wishing to call in for the courtesy of the floor, now's the time to do it. The number is 570-398-5576. Again, that number is 570-398-5576. We'll take the first caller. Just so you guys are aware, on the stream, they posted the number as well.
Thank you, Dr. Dady.
That says still nothing.
Okay.
Again, if you'd like to call, the number is 570-398-5576. We're about 1 minute into it, Mr. Allen. Still nothing. We're approaching minute number 2 now. Do you want to give them, how long do you want to give them, Mr. Allen?
2 more minutes.
All right, we're at about 3 minutes now, so 1 more minute. And folks, if anyone would like to call, it's 570-398-5576. And you got about 10 seconds, Mr. Allen.
Okay. All right, at this point, we'll go ahead and close courtesy the floor. This is close enough to the time allotted. No fights. So moving on to personnel, items A through C, and with A amended, as previously noted. Can I have a motion to approve A through C under personnel?
So moved, Mary.
Thank you.
Second.
I don't know when to bring it up. Should I bring it up now if I'd like to have A pulled out to vote on separately?
We can do that.
Nancy, which one did you say?
The A, letter A.
Okay. All right.
So we'll do a roll when we, any questions at all on A, B, or C that we can address now? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and separate item A as one roll call vote and B and C as second vote. Is that acceptable to everybody?
Fine.
Okay. Do a roll call on A, please.
Mr. Becker,
Yes.
Mr. Berngard,
Yes.
Mrs. Dobler,
Yes.
Mrs. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Kinley,
Yes.
Mrs. Petrosky,
No.
Mrs. Stemler,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
8-1. Ready for B and C?
Okay, we'll move to B and C.
Mr. Becker,
Yes.
Mr. Berngard,
Yes.
Mrs. Dobler,
Yes.
Mrs. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Kinley,
Yes.
Mrs. Petrosky,
Yeah.
Mrs. Stemler,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
9-0.
Okay, thank you. Next item, curriculum instruction. There's nothing under curriculum instruction. Building and grounds, nothing under building and grounds. Finance, we have A through I. And Mr. Enders, could you just give a quick overview of these items?
Yes. Letter A is our engagement letter for our year-end audit. We would do this on an annual basis this time every year. This allows us to essentially start the audit. Letter B is our special ed agreement with Blast IU 17. These are students that we have in, or we have services provided to special ed students by Blast. Letters C through H are all CSIU bids, KPN bids. We are in a collective purchasing group with CSIU, Keystone Purchasing Network, that we award these bids at the end of the year to start the next school year to purchase these items. And then finally, letter I is our real estate tax rates, setting them at the rebalance rates as we've been discussing for about the past 2 meetings, I believe. So those are the overviews of those items.
Okay, so I have a motion to approve A through I.
So moved, Nancy.
Ms. Petrosky, that was your motion?
Yes.
Okay, second?
Second.
I will, Angela.
Sorry, go ahead. Take Angela. Mine was muted for some reason. I don't know how I did that.
Down in the little left-hand corner there. Okay, and I'm going to request that we do a separate roll call on I, just for the benefit of the taxpayers. So we'll do a roll call on A through H. Is there any discussion on?
Mr. Enders, on the engagement letter, did I read somewhere where there's no increase in the fee, or did I look at something incorrect?
You are correct. I believe I wrote that in my board update, I think 2 weeks ago when I originally provided this to you. There's no increase in the fee this year.
Has that happened before? Is that a reflection of you doing such a great job, or they're trying to be nice to us?
The answer is yes, Mr. Enders.
Yes, he does a good job.
Yes, and yes.
They indicated, I believe it was a recognition of the current economic situation. In their conversation with me, there could be a collective number of items there that I really don't feel comfortable talking about publicly. I know there's some changes going on there, so I really believe it's probably more just the current economic situation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kinley. Any other questions or concerns on A through H? Okay, hearing none, can we have a roll call on A through H, please, Mr. Enders?
Mr. Becker,
Yes.
Mr. Brungard,
Yes.
Mrs. Dobler,
Yes.
Mrs. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Kinley,
Yes.
Mrs. Petrosky,
Yes.
Mrs. Stemler,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
9-0.
Okay, and then any questions or comments on item A, setting the real estate taxes to the rebalance rate?
No questions. Just a comment for the public, and most are aware of this. The rebalance rate is governed by the fact that we cover 2 counties.
Okay, hearing no further questions or comments, Mr. Enders, roll call, please, on I.
Mr. Becker,
Yes.
Mr. Berngard,
Yes.
Mrs. Dobler,
Yes.
Mrs. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Kinley,
Yes.
Mrs. Petrosky,
Yes.
Mrs. Stemler,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Allen.
Yes.
9-0.
Okay. We passed on that one. Miscellaneous, on the agenda, we have items A through D, but I have been requested to pull item B at the request of the athletic director. So we'll be looking for a motion to approve A, C, and D.
So moved.
Second, Mary.
Thank you. Any discussion, questions, or corrections on A, C, and D?
I have a question on A. I'm
Yes.
wondering I'm not opposed, but I'm just wondering the why that we would need the rehabilitation. Can you just explain to me the background of it, please?
Yeah, that used to be done by a different agency, but the past couple of years, this is basically for our services for kids who may have it that need physical therapy and things like that. That's done within the schools. So if it's in their 504 or IEP plan, we have to offer it. We do it through a third party, in this case, UPMC. I believe before that might have been done through HOPE. That was before.
That's correct.
Part.
So my second question is, how did we land on the UPMC Williamsport?
That would be before me. Before I actually had to be this deep in it. I don't know why the change from HOPE to UPMC. I would not be able to answer that for you.
I think Jersey Shore has a rehabilitation place. And not that I'm opposed. I'm just wondering how we landed at Williamsport UPMC.
Is it
Well,
for pediatrics?
Yeah.
Yes, all for pediatrics.
Okay, I wasn't.
One of the things that, you could do a couple things. You could hold off on this vote for this for now, and I could get an answer for you. You could approve it. It's only a year contract, so you could put direction to Dr. Ulmer to look into the possibility of using Jersey Shore Hospital for this, Geisinger of Jersey Shore for this service after this year. So you have some options there.
Is this who we had last year?
Yes.
Okay.
Is there any
It is.
increase in the fees? Is there an increase in fees, Dr. Dady?
That's a Ben question. He's looking at it. I can tell he's already searching it.
Phil's eyes are moving.
Mrs. Thomas, I'm sorry. You said this. Your answer was this is the same company. Dr. Dady had said we were changing. I just want clarification on that.
We changed from HOPE to UPM last year, so this would be our second year with UPMs.
Okay.
That's why I don't know the answer as to why we changed, is because I was not in those discussions as to why we changed.
And there's not am I right? There's not a set amount here. It depends on the students that are involved, and because it can change as the year goes on. There could be more, there could be less. Am I not right on that?
It could. We could give you an amount. However, it's just a matter of if more kids end up needing it, it could change.
And I'm guessing it's just an hourly rate.
That is correct.
Yes.
I don't believe it's an increase. I can tell you I did find the HOPE contract from last year, and the HOPE rates were exactly the same as the rates on here. So My belief is when they switched to UPMC midpoint this year, that there was the same exact rates from the Hope contract. Understand what I mean there?
We switched mid-year from Hope.
Yeah, Hope dropped the services. I pulled because I know this is always approved about the same time frame, and on June 10th of 2019, under miscellaneous, was the Hope agreement. And the Cope agreement for 1920 shows the same exact hourly rates.
All right, this is the benefit of streaming because I'm getting updates on this from people that were in the meetings. And it says here that we changed because Hope chose to reassign to UPMC and not to offer the service. We approved a reassignment from Hope, and the other update I got is that when they looked into this, I don't know that this is, I'm not saying this is gospel, this is what I'm being told right now, is that Jersey Shore Hospital does not offer pediatric PE and that stuff in schools.
So in schools.
And who is that information from, Dr. Dady?
Pam, who had to put all this information together when they approved UPMC.
So it wasn't just somebody happened to be on Facebook or something.
No, I didn't get it off Facebook. I got it from our administrative assistant. She's the one that had to put it all together when we switched, evidently. So that's why.
Thank you, Pam.
I'm about to get a text in 5 seconds that probably says you're welcome. I'll just tell you now. So.
Okay, any other further discussion or questions on A, C, and D? Okay, hearing none, can we have a roll call, Mr. Enders?
Mr. Becker,
Yes.
Mr. Brungard,
Yes.
Mrs. Dobler,
Yes.
Mrs. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Kinley,
Yes.
Mrs. Petrosky,
Yes.
Mrs. Stemler,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
9-0.
I will say, Mrs. Grant, in future years, if Geisinger would offer that through Jersey Shore, then then as a board, you'd be able to, put it out between them and see who gives you a better hourly rate.
I think there's other rehabilitations in Jersey Shore outside of the hospital too. I can't think of what they're called right now. I just was curious how we landed in Williamsport.
Okay, anything under old business for anybody to bring up? Hearing none, executive session, and then we will not conduct further business, and the executive session is for personnel and legal. Is that correct, Mr. Enders?
That is correct.
All right, Pat, if you could get us off the live feed and then let me know when we're off.